So we can look at our design files with a little bit more detail now. If you see what I've got, I'm just going to go back into edit view so you can see my design, and you might be able to see some problems here. So if you've been having a look at your own design files, maybe you've had a chance to do some designing yourself, or if you've just been watching some of the videos that we've included in this training package, you should be able to tell that possibly and hopefully that there's going to be an issue with this this piece to print, because there's no support underneath this cube part. So there's lots of ways to avoid having an issue with your print, and I'm going to go through a couple of them here, and we'll get to know a little bit more about the software as we do it. So this will just give you a little bit more control and hopefully solve some of the issues that you might come across when you're printing your own pieces. So just to take you through the software, PrusaSlicer, when we click on this, the move icon, it allows us to move our piece. So we can move up, down, left, right if you need to. And if we click on the plate, I might have a better view here. So up. Now it seems to, it kind of magnetizes and seems to stick back down to the plate for obvious reasons, because if we do print a floating object, it's not going to print, so it doesn't let us do that, but we can move it left and right. And I'll just change the view here. We should be clearly able to see then up and down as well. If we go to our scale button, this allows us to resize, and we can drag any of these corners in to see how that might look. If we hold down shift, yeah, it'll keep it in proportion. If we don't hold down shift while we drag, then it will no, we can see that it actually still keeps it in proportion. Let's look at it from the top. Now, okay, so we lose our proportionality there. So it's always good, but it depends on what you want to do. But if you want to keep the proportions of your piece, just make sure you're holding down shift, and that whatever scaling that you're doing, it will be in proportion to the rest of the object. So I'm going to undo that. Okay, so the next icon we have here, the option to rotate. So if I click on this, and it should be able to allow us, to rotate it on the place there. If I move and just take another look, you can see that we can rotate on any axis. So you can see there. So I'm going to undo that because we don't want to rotate it. And then the last one I'm going to show you is to actually allows us to rotate it on a face. So any of these kind of whiter areas here allow us to actually move our piece to so that it sits on that particular face. So if I click here, we can see that it's moved our piece, and it's not quite straight, but maybe that's what you want. If I do this, any of these kind of whiter areas allows us to move to. Now let's see. So when we look at our movement, we look at what we've done here. We've made some changes to the orientation of our piece, but it doesn't satisfy our issue, because even though now we've problem solved our support issue here, and we've actually introduced an even bigger problem with this hollowed out part. So we know that when we go to print, that we're going to have a serious issue because there's no support in the center area here. So gravity will come into play and our print will not be successful. So we need to think of other ways. How do we print our piece without falling into the issue with a print fail? So I'll show you what I've done. I've just made a small change to the actual object itself. So if I come back to take a look at them, so we can see I've added in an extra shape down here. So this shape it doesn't exceed a 45-degree angle, which, as we've talked about, is a kind of sweet spot in terms of the maximum angle that you can have on your print. So I've just added this piece in at the bottom, and I suppose the reason I should explain is why I would rather avoid support is because there is an additional piece that I want to make sure that we can actually include and use with the piece when we go to print it in the end. So we have this this is called, we call it motor holder, and so a motor fits inside it. And then we also have this motor holder arm, and this arm, this cube area, also needs to fit inside. They need to fit together. And so what we're trying to avoid really is printing support material inside. So let's just delete this for a second. I'll just show you what I mean. So when we go to print, as I said, there'll be an issue underneath here. Now I've got the wrong piece selected. I'm going to just bring in the previous piece and show you what that looks like with some supported material. So as I said, this cube area here is hollow, and we want this arm to fit in here. Now, if I go into my print settings, and I go into now, so I'm in simple, and just keep an eye out, because when you're in simple you get less options and you may need to go into the advanced or the expert settings, but for now let's just stick with simple and see if we can get what we need out of it, so that we don't need to see any other additional settings than the ones that we need. I go into support material and I'm going to generate support material. So it tells me that supports work better when I have detect bridging perimeters selected. So I'm just going to choose yes, because as I said, PrusaSlicer is quite intuitive, so I tend to agree with the suggestions that it makes. So generate support material, and it's going to auto generate support material, so that's fine. So I'm going to come back to my platter, and I'm going to, everything here is fine. We're going to print a draft, it's PLA, and it's the correct printer. I'm going to slice. So when we slice it, we can see the additional support material here is in green. Now, that's quite extensive. The part underneath is what I want, but what it's actually done is added in support material in this kind of cube area as well. Now, I've printed this before, so I know that this cube area, the inside of it, doesn't actually need any support material. We can see that the support material has been generated all the way through, and I know that that's definitely not necessary. So I find with the PrusaSlicer, and you'll find this with a lot of slicers, is that it does tend to add quite a lot of supporting material that may not be needed. And so this is why kind of testing your print is always very good. Just to let you know, when you print the first time, it really very rarely comes out. You're always learning. There's a lot of failure involved, and if you think of it as a process where you're continually kind of learning until you get to the point where your print is really the way you want it to be, that's the kind of best mindset to have, just so that you're not kind of too disappointed as you go along. And so we can make these changes as we see that they need to be made. So I'm not happy with that support material that's been added, and I need to have a little bit more control than that. So I'm going to go back to my print settings, and I really need to get a little bit more here. There's not enough there for me to work with. So I'm going to go to advanced, and I'm going to see what else we can get. Okay, so overhang threshold, it says 55 degrees. I'm going to leave it at that for now, because actually what I want to do is I want to be able to select where my supports occur. So let's just check. I don't think there's anything here actually for me. So I'm just going to come back into my platter, and I'm going to see, okay, so over here we have some more options on support. So here we've got supports everywhere, and I think that's where the problem has occurred. So if I click in the drop down menu here, there's a few different options. So support on the build plate only means that it will only support from the plate up to the object. Okay, so let's just take a look at that. So I've selected support on build plate only. I'm going to slice now. Okay, that's much better. So if I chose not to, or if I wasn't in a position to add the extra piece that I showed you in the previous iteration of this design, then I could actually just print with these support materials, and that would be okay, and then just remove them after the print. Now you can see that even in draft, we've gone from what you previously saw as from 16 minutes, we've gone to 23 minutes. So just keep in mind that printing support material does add to the print time. Now, when I just take a look, I'll just see what this looks like. I'm going to go back into edit mode. I'm going to delete this, delete what I've got here. I'm going to delete this, and I'm just going to add my previous piece. So this is the final piece where I've added in my additional, I suppose my own kind of design support underneath. And let's just slice this in draft. So it's 20 minutes. So we've gone from 16, which was the print that wouldn't have worked. Oh, and it has added support here as well. So I'm going to get rid of that because I don't need support. I know for this I don't need support. So I'm going to untick this, generate support material, back into platter, go back into edit mode. I'm going to slice again. Take a look. Okay, so we see there's no support material. That's perfect. So it's 17 minutes. So we've gone from 16 minutes on a design that I know didn't work because we didn't have this additional piece underneath, it's added a minute to include this. And when we consider the difference then between adding this, so it's given 17 minutes, it would be an additional 6 minutes then if we wanted to print support instead. So you can see that really is quite a bit of difference, again, when you're supporting multiple prints, when you're printing multiple prints, I should say. You want to make sure that, I suppose, you're being as efficient as you can with your time.